This is Alexandra from PersEd.
And this is Paul from the Time Repair Corporation.
And we both welcome you to our monthly Interchange.
A meeting of the minds, people reaching outside of themselves in an attempt to find a deeper understanding of perspectives.
And it is through this coming together of perspectives that we hope to serve the divergent, the polymaths, the non-conforming thinkers, people who don't fit into rules. In short, the people we like to call angels of chaos.
And we want to.
I love that title.
Right,
Sorry.
that's a fair response, I think. So we want to achieve that by inviting these troublemakers from around the globe and digging into their experiences and their unique views.
Views which we are bringing forth with models for personal, global, and sustainable change, so that we can design a world that is fit for the future we want. But there's another dimension to it as well.
We're trying to grow that conversation to make sure that more people are able to weigh in and contribute to this actual practical creation of tomorrow. So reach out to us and let's do our best to make this a borderless interchange.
Today's guest is one of those polymaths who really cover such a wide span of disciplines. So he studied horticulture. He got diplomas in certifications in education, in drama, and in public health. He's now a UK qualified teacher. He is a Blackmagic design training partner. He is a certified DaVinci Resolve trainer. He is involved in acting for television and for theater. He's involved in voiceover. He's involved in film media training. He's involved in employability training. We can go on. And the most interesting thing is that for the past 30 years, he has been training, supporting people from a diversity of backgrounds, from different ethnic backgrounds, people who are young, people who come from disadvantaged areas, people who are prisoners, people who are neurodiverse, people who have disabilities. And it's this pathway of growth that he leads them on through a variety of different tools, methods, approaches that are very much anchored in performing arts and in technology. He is based in the UK, but he's originally from New Zealand. So yes. Please welcome with me, Lance Phillips. How are you doing, Lance?
Oh, good, thank you. That's such a lovely introduction. It's interesting when you hear someone describe your whole history back to you. Yeah. So, yeah, I find whatever discipline I've done, it's been really hard to fit into it because I don't fit the usual model of who someone should be within that discipline. So when I did my horticulture degree, I did pass it. There's nothing wrong with my horticultural knowledge. Yeah, people would say, well, you're doing the wrong degree because you're quite animated and you're quite interesting when you tell stories, and horticulture students aren't really meant to be interesting and animated. You're meant to be quite quiet and reserved. And I don't know, I got told off by a lecturer when I did my final year presentation. He said, "You're too Spanish. You're using your hands when you're describing things." I didn't really realize that was one of the qualifications to do horticulture. I couldn't use my hands to describe things. So
do not have Spanish hands.
No, well, no. I'm actually mixed race, you know, so I do have a little bit of Spanish in me. So maybe it's come from that. It was interesting actually, because yeah, my background's diverse in itself, but it was interesting studying. And when I did horticulture, I was very shy, and I chose that sort of degree because I wanted to not be traditional. I didn't want to, because my father at the time was like a computer manager for an architecture firm, and I never saw him, and he'd come home very rarely and very late, and I ended up having to look after myself pretty much as in between. So I'd come home the weekends and I'd go to boarding school, so a grammar school, and just in case anyone thinks that I'm from a posh background because I went to a boarding school, no, you know, so I'm from a working class family. My father was a builder, and then he was trying to escape that sort of thing, so he banned me from sounding like a Kiwi, which is why I've always had a rather English accent, even in New Zealand, and then also sent me off to boarding school. But yeah, it was cheaper to come home for the weekends. And yeah, so I mean, that's partly, I don't know how interesting that is, but you know, that whole aspect of education, I went to a comprehensive first and then a boarding school afterwards. And then from there, I went to university. So, you know, so I know the difference from myself as a learner, the differences between a comprehensive in my teenage years and also a grammar school. And personally, I didn't really like the grammar school system because they really pigeonholed you into one thing only, right? So I wanted to study biology and I wasn't allowed to because I was in bottom set at grammar school, and I was in top set. So set is like, you know, based on your IQ. I was in top set and comprehensive, or second to top set and comprehensive. And I found that there was a slight pigeonholing in comprehensive as well, but at least you had a wider variety of things you could learn. Whereas in grammar school was very much into the sort of intellectual subjects. And because I was in the worst class for science, I wasn't allowed to learn biology. And we studied horticulture at school. So it was my way to get out of the classroom. I hated the sort of confines of like my dad with his stress of an office space, being stuck in front of a computer. And this is, you know, decades ago. Now we're all stuck in front of a computer during COVID, but back then that seemed, yeah, ironic, isn't it? Yeah, he's stuck in front of a computer. But in an office, he didn't get to move, and the stress of interpersonal conflicts at work and all that. And so I did horticulture at school, and you got outside and you got down with the environment and growing things and learn how to look after animals, and very lucky to have a school farm. And so I really loved that. But the biology bit was, which of course relates to horticulture, they wouldn't let me do that as a discrete subject. I just had to do general science. And I remember studying up because one of my motivations was, because it was in the bottom set at a grammar school, was the bottom set of any school, there's really bad behavior, you know. So if you really want to learn and everyone else doesn't, you get picked on. And there was, back then, you know, you get picked on with scalpels because people would have scalpels and Bunsen burners. Yeah, seriously. So, and we had a teacher that was just, you know, she was lovely, but she wasn't very good. So, because she was trying to be mumsy, but had no sense of discipline, that you can't learn unless you feel safe. So I definitely did not feel particularly safe in an environment. It's a boys' school. So, you know, you can just imagine all those hormones running wild in your puberty years. So we had the head of science come and teach us for a bit, and everyone settled down a bit more. And I think I had to go. No, that's right. I went into his class briefly because she was ill. She had a breakdown or something. So they split the boys up into different classes, and I was in his class briefly. I learned something. I learned biology. It was really exciting. I really wanted to stay there, and so I pleaded with him, please, sir, don't send me back. I want to be in your classroom. And he said, "Oh, but you've missed a whole term." I said, "Give me the books to read, and I'll study up on it." I did, actually. I studied up on biology and DNA and Mendelssohn, I think it was. You know, the whole. The monks that just discovered DNA.
Yeah, Mendel.
And yeah, Mendel, that's it, Mendel. And yeah, I went back and I studied that during my Easter break, and came back and I said, look, I did this, and it's very admirable, but no, I've got to return you back to your teacher, which is a shame, you know. I mean, I personally think, yeah, because I am a qualified teacher now. I personally, and I do know this happens in the UK system, we assess people when they start their journey, particularly secondary school, and then at that point, whatever's happening in their lives isn't taken into account that can change. So, you know, and as I described, I was coming from a very stressful situation. My home life was very stressful. So then going to boarding school, you know, my ability to cognitively, you know, pass the different IQ tests to get further up that situation meant that I was stuck in this sort of bottom set. And then there was other boys that just didn't want to be there at the school, you know. And then you're kept there for 3-4 years. So in that sort of environment, you just can't learn, even though you've got a passion for learning. You just can't learn because it's unsafe to learn, because everyone else sees you as a threat because you're really enthusiastic, or like the term still exists today, teacher's pet. No, I just want to learn for myself. You know, I enjoy learning. I'm not trying to be a pet for anyone. That's a slave, really. Yeah, so I went to university, and that was really interesting because it was a great time, 3 years, well, actually 4, because I did fail a couple of papers. I had to resit them. But 3 years of university was a time to grow up and leave the school mentality behind. And actually, I got better grades at university than I ever did at school, and that sort of testifies, you know. So at school, I was lucky to get a C. And my teachers would get frustrated with me because they said, you're so verbally intelligent, you know, we can ask you all the questions, you know the answers, but when it comes to this time limited exam, you keep failing them. And I remember my English teacher saying, oh, I'm so frustrated with you, Phillips, because they called us by surnames back then. He said, you should be able to pass this, you know. And I would go, well, I'm doing my best. Why are you getting frustrated with me? So it's amazing that the education system hasn't changed that much, that we get frustrated with students rather than change the system to help them. Yeah. You know, so a time limited exam, and in what situations we actually really, even in work, you know, I've been working my whole life. I've never been in a situation where I've got to regurgitate knowledge within 60 minutes, very fast. And a variety of different parts of knowledge, you know, that just doesn't happen in real life. And I personally think, you know, my current, so let's fast forward to this recently, you know, I've been working with, so I've got have had an EU funded contract, which is also UK government funded contract, what they call the Education and Skills Funding Agency. So they fund adult ed here in the UK. So it's match funded with the EU. And that's for 16 to 24-year-olds who are unemployed. And pretty much the common experience of the vast majority of them is they've had a bad experience at school and they weren't really valued at school. Hence they didn't learn, didn't get the grades. And then they've left school and they don't know what to do. Yeah. It's not because they're stupid, they're incredibly bright, but they just need to be given those opportunities.